Hello everyone, Darren here, and today's episode of Watch the Academy is going to be the second installment of how to defend a failed or abandoned flank. I know a lot of people kind of talked about these two main scenarios of, well, what if you're in this tank or what if you're in this type of tank and you can't really leave the position, what do you do? And so that's what this video is going to cover. We're going to cover the two most talked about other scenarios, and each one will have a summary at the end. So let's get started. So before I begin, I would like to quickly explain a couple things here. Because of the fact that I did not have a whole lot of time to reshoot this numerous times, and the fact that I had such a large amount of volunteers, some specific details regarding some of these situations are rough or may not be completely accurate. Those would be like exact tank numbers and stuff like that. You know, factors I cannot completely um, account for just based on the pure randomness of matchmaking. The second thing that I would like to explain is that there again is no audio in these two clips because, unfortunately for me, I had to do a program update, and every time I do that it resets my settings, and in my kind of rush with my constrained amount of time I forgot to fix those settings, so it recorded me and like 12 of us all talking in this party, and it just, yeah, you would just, I'm not going to explain it any farther, it'd be crazy. So that is why there is no in-game audio for these two clips. I apologize. But let's move on into this first situation. Now, situation number one is that you're a very slow tank, like a super heavy or like a T95 or something like that. And by the time you realized that you were going, that, you know, the people that were originally following you that you thought that you had support, or by the time you actually got to looking at the minimap, you realized that you were alone. Pretty much by that time you realize that there's no way that you can escape the situation you're in. What you should be doing at that point is looking for any area to where you can, you know, get yourself into at least somewhat of an advantageous position and defend from there. So even if you have to pull back a few hundred meters or so to get to that position, do it. Here in this demonstration, you see I'm in a Type 5 Heavy, and I was too slow to actually get to the 9-0 line where the bulk of the enemy team is. So what did I do is that I positioned myself at this church to where I could side scrape, and as you can see here, the only actual support that I have is a light tank that, wise enough, realized, oh, hey, there's a bunch of tanks here focused on this Type 5. I'm going to just weasel my way in here and just do something. Unfortunately, the fate of is that it was a human wave of just all these heavy tanks, and realizing that it was just me, they eventually overran my position. But there's nothing I could have done, and I just straight up had to accept my fate that I was going to die and deal as much damage as I could. And sometimes that's all you can do in this type of situation. So in summary, find an advantageous position and just hold until overrun or help arrives. Now, real quick before we get to scenario 2, I'd like to remind everyone that I consider a failed flank any flank on a map that about or less than a third of the team has committed themselves to. And that is what you're going to see in this scenario. That I do have support, but it is not half the team, or it's roughly about a third of the team, give or take one tank. For the next scenario, we are discussing the same issue, but you are in a more mobile tank, and this is really anything that is not a slow, lumbering, super heavy, or TD, like the Type 5 or the T95, for example. Now the solution is also roughly the same, but this time we can see that I was actually able to get to the point of contention on this flank, while the remaining third of my team sits lazily at the back of the map and snipes. Now I paused the scenario here real quick because I wanted to explain that in my years of playing this game, I learned that there is a significant effect of tank sniping at the back. and that these sniping teammates may actually have the same effect as if they were right next to you, but with the added benefit of being unspotted. Normally what stops an advance on either team cold in its tracks is either a spotted enemy force of equal or greater number, or that advances teammates losing a large amount of HP very quickly by unspotted tanks. Now, like I said, the problem and the solution is about the same as scenario 1, but this time we can actually use our position and mobility to spot the enemy team for our teammates sitting at the back, as well as also putting ourselves into a position to hold out from being rushed as best we can. Now sure, I could probably easily turn tail and run, but most of the time the outcome is that you are destroyed before your team is even able to eliminate all the enemy tanks on that flank. And that's what you're witnessing right here, is that I have essentially put myself to the main point of contention on the 9 line, and I am using my good gun and gun depression to remain hull down and be able to spot the enemy tanks for my teammates at the back, while still being able to safely put shots at the enemy myself while bouncing the majority of the shots that are coming my way. And you're even noticing here that the teammates at the back are kind of watching my flanks for me, almost as if they are there right next to me in person. And so, like I said, that has, that effect of being able to sit at the back and still stop and advance is like almost exactly like being right next to you. So, in summary, I'd like to say to get to an advantageous position that not only allows you to slow the onslaught of enemies, but also allows you to spot for any teammates far enough back that are sniping, if applicable. Applicable, of course. I don't know why I struggled with that word. I would also like to quickly point out that slow tanks and even semi-more mobile tanks can do the same solutions from the first part of the series, provided that they see the issue early enough. If you noticed you're by yourself too late in the game, most, if not all, other players will say you only have yourself to blame. And that concludes today's video on how to defend or deal with a failed or abandoned flank, Part 2. I'd like to thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up. And if you want to see more videos like this one, don't forget to subscribe. But until next time, this has been Darren of WotC Academy.